Hello. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you guys?
The internet issue. Yeah.
It's all right. It's all right. I mean, I miss playing games, and the couple I have played so far have been mask wearing, which is not ideal. But I've started to play games, which is good. But generally, lockdown's an odd one. For me. I've been working throughout, so I haven't had any extra time, but I've had less kind of impetus to paint stuff for tournaments. So it's kind of been, a bit actually less hobby than probably usually. So yeah.
Yeah, I got them all here ready.
Oh, yeah. I'd almost forgotten what these questions were going to be, and then now I realise it's quite a long. It's going to be a long one. This one. I guess I started. I suppose you'd say I started with like painting airfix and stuff like that when I was really young, and I was always like into painting models and building like and the like little green toy soldiers you get. But I suppose Warhammer and all that sort of stuff started at a car boot sale when I was 8 or something like that. I just went over to a car boot sale, and some guy had some old Chaos Warhammer Fantasy Chaos Knights for sale, and he said, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's really good fun. You'll like it." And and I paid like £1 for these Chaos Knights, and in the box came one of those little fold-out leaflets that you used to have. It was had like an advert for all of the Warhammer stuff. So it had the Fantasy, 40k, Necromunda, I think it was in there at the time, Blood Bowl, and Lord of the Rings. And no, it was less a poster and more like a little thing that sort of concertinaed out into a really long pamphlet. And yeah, and that was the first entry to it, and that would have been, I think it only had the Fellowship of the Ring in it, so it would have been 2001 or two, and it was
Oh, wow.
pretty close. So I might have even been earlier. It might not have had. I always get this all mixed up. I never quite know when I actually got into it, because I sort of bought into various different hobbies at the same time and then caught back up on stuff. So a lot of people say the Battle Games of the Middle Earth magazines, which was the case for me. I actually pestered my dad so that I could get a subscription, but I had to buy the first 10 or however many issues it was to catch up. So I had like a big bulk of them for a long time, and then I caught up on buying the rest on eBay and things like that. So it was all weird, but it was those magazines and that moment. But I played a lot of 40k and fantasy, or sort of bought the toys anyway, well early on, and then just was hooked ever since, pretty much. I don't think I've had a year without painting toy soldiers.
Excellent. Um, so would you say that's your probably favorite aspect of the hobby then, the painting aspect or playing or what?
It's for me. I don't know. It sort of ebbs and flows, because I like to think that I'm a decent painter, but I don't. I don't really kind of push myself to paint unless I've got like a deadline in mind. So back when I didn't play Middle Earth, I used to sort of play 40k and fantasy and stuff, and I'd talk to someone about the system, and they'd say, "Oh, I'll give you a game," and then I'll go, "Oh yeah, okay, cool, I'll do that." I'll spend like 2 months and 3 months or whatever building, painting, buying an whole army, and then I'd paint it up for that one game, and then I'd play the game with them, and I'd be like, "Right, okay, that was it, that was good." And then I'd kind of move on sometimes if I didn't really like it, and only really regular games did I actually kind of commit to it. So I think it for me, it's probably a bit of everything that makes it sweet, because I hate like building stuff. I can't stand that. But painting models and playing has always kind of been a kind of one and the same thing. I've tried forever to just play with painted models, but I mean, often that isn't the case. But particularly with sort of 40k and stuff, way back when I used to play with a few grey armies, and I kind of vowed never to do that again, especially since Lord of the Rings. So, but I think probably the actual answer, rather than painting or playing, is I'm a collector. I hoard the models, and I just have too many of them. And I mean, if you look around, if I could move the camera around, you can see like under the bed, there's like a load of boxes of stuff. There's some stuff on the bed. This is the spare room. This is not my normal room. And then you spin around, you've got the case of stuff there, and on top, and just right next to the thing, you've got Cirith Ungol, and then right here, you've got Easterlings. So it's like it surrounds me, and most of it I have absolutely no reason for having now. But there's always another project. There's always a collectible thing, and I think early on I knew I wanted to collect. I liked collecting things. I can't remember what it was. I think it was whether it was Battle Games and Middle Earth magazines, or I used to do like the James Bond magazines or the Hobbit History magazines, and I just loved collecting the whole collection and stuff like that. So I've always been a bit of a collector. Even DVDs, I've got hundreds of DVDs and CDs and all that. So maybe that's what I am. I'm addicted to collecting stuff, and it just so happens that I love the Lord of the Rings films. I love the Lord of the Rings books, and these models and the game just all kind of combines to make this perfect storm of money draining capabilities. So yeah, I'm a collector. Yeah. I've only kind of realised that as I'm talking to you, actually. But yeah, that's definitely I wouldn't say it's my favourite bit, but there's something nice about having a whole collection of everything. And I'm a bit of a completist in that way. That I spent a long time when the Hobbit stuff kind of started fading away, and there was kind of rumours that GW was going to drop Middle Earth generally. I looked in. I started scouring eBay and all that sort of stuff, because I wanted to make sure I had all these models, because I'd kind of dipped in and out of it for years and bought a few things, painted them, never really played the games, but then sold them again to buy another army of 40k or whatever it was. And I realized this time I was like, oh God, if I'm not careful, I won't ever be able to buy them again, because they'll just be gone and vanished into the ether. So I guess that was the hoarding bit, and I went through a crazy stage when I got a job, basically just buying loads of stuff, and I'm still working through some of it now. I mean, the Easterlings I'm painting now, there are some of them that I've had for years, and they've just been sat in a box, but finally I'm getting to use them, which is great. Yeah, I don't know how you have the patience to count everything. Yeah, I think I was the same. That it kind of interrupted me. Yeah, it was just crazy. It just kicked off after I got a job, pretty much, and then I realised I now no longer need to sell my old armies. I have disposable income, so it became like they're just there now. Yeah, I pretty much. I just hate it. There's something about there's no. I don't think there's any particular skill to assembling models. And yeah, converting is a different thing. That I actually quite enjoy converting to an extent. And I've made a few, I made a Halbarad conversion, Halbarad on horse, and I made an Aragorn mounted out of the plastic kits and the Rohand and stuff like that. I like converting things, but just gluing arms on and all that sort of stuff is just so incredibly tedious, and I don't understand how anyone can enjoy it. But it's just awful, because it's the bit of the hobby that you kind of have to do, and you don't get any enjoyment out of it other than you've got a miniature at the end, but you still got another process of spray painting it and then actually doing the first base coats and then kind of actually painting, which is kind of the satisfying bit. It's just, if I could pay to have all of that done for me, I probably would. But yeah, and actually that's why I quite like metal models. And so I mentioned the Easterlings. I've got a load of the metal Easterlings, which I've got right here, and it's just absolutely perfect because you don't have to do anything with it other than glue it onto the slotter base, and that's my favorite bit. But I think there are loads of. Go on.
I was going to say, if you don't like, are you one of the people who don't like Lego then? Is it sort of the building aspect thing, or? I think
it's strange. I have like little Lego minifigs of stuff, but I'd never really got into it as a kid, I guess. Yeah, so you're probably right. I had a big bucket of it, and I'd stick some stuff together, and I'd want it to be really cool, and then it only ever came out as like a wall or like a brick with a wheel on it.
Yeah, it must stem from that then. The assembly of minutes.
Yeah, and I think even the Airfix models when I was a kid, I built like tanks and planes and stuff a little bit when I was younger. And I just hated the whole getting plastic glue all over your hands and the smell of it and the kind of knowing that you've cocked it up slightly by just putting a little bit too much glue here and you've ruined it. You've ruined someone's really nice model. I did it with the Keeper of the Dungeons, the new one that's come out. I cut the end of the super glue off because I couldn't get the thing in. So there's a too big a hole and a big blob of super glue goes on and completely ruins this. Well, not completely ruins, but you know, it's like a 25 quid or whatever it is model. And I've just dumped a load of super glue on the back. And I just think, why wasn't it just one bit of resin that I could just paint? So annoying. Yeah. I'm a cheapo. I get like the thin super glue that you get from like Poundland or whatever. And I'm maybe I should do the thick stuff, but I always just get the cheap stuff, and then it's too big, so then it dries up the top, and then I slowly have to chop the tops off, and then it becomes like a bucket of super glue every time I put it on. But yeah, but that's just the hobby side of things. There are obviously bits that I don't like of all of the kind of hobby, but yeah, that's probably definitely the hobby painting side of it that I dislike the most.
Cool. So we'll move on to your sort of hobby balance then. So how do you prioritize? Is it model terrain building? Is it painting? Is it playing? What's your sort of balance between that? It's obviously it's a little bit different now with lockdown, but on a normal duration, what's the balance?
Yeah, I don't know, because last year was probably not ordinary for me in the sense that I went to an excessive number of tournaments compared with the previous year. So I spent a lot of time gaming. I probably did 2 or 3 tournaments a month sometimes. So I think, I can't remember the exact number, 24 or something like that tournaments last year, which is insane. But yeah, there'll be number will be on the charts in the GBHL or something, but it was quite a lot. And so I'd say last year I spent an awful lot of time doing absolutely everything because I was constantly painting a new army. I really wanted to try and take new stuff every time because of the podcast. I wanted to talk about new things essentially rather than just be the same army over and over again. But I'd say usually I spend most of my time painting, and it's the sort of thing that I'll spend most evenings. I'll sit in front of the TV. The missus will put something she wants on, and then and I'll paint for a couple of hours, and then we'll watch something together. Or if she's got something particularly crap on, then I'll get the headset on and watch videos like you guys, or any of the, or listen to podcasts or whatever, or do YouTube stuff while I'm doing it. So I'd say mostly painting. Gaming at home, because my schedules are all a bit weird because of what I do. I'm working shifts sometimes. It's not as easy to game regularly. So I probably maybe play a game at home once every fortnight. And then weekends and tournaments are good because I can go away for the whole weekend and it's kind of blocked off. And I know I can play 6 games and I can interact with everyone and have a good laugh. So yeah. I don't think that answered at all your question of what the balance is, but it is a bit of everything. That's why. Terrain building you mentioned, I don't really do that. I do like a project a year, essentially. I like to do a bit, like I did this year, I did the Kirathon, and I've done a display board in the past, and I've built a board. So I probably do one of those a year, just just to mix things up essentially. But I'm not by any means a terrain expert.
That sounds pretty much like me, to be fair. Well, I'll probably do less terrain building. So
I think it's a good way to do it, just to balance things out, and because ultimately I'm in the hobby for every single aspect, not just the fluffy theme stuff, not just the painting, not just the gaming. It's a bit of everything for me. So I'll get into writing army lists as well, and I'll spend an evening with all the books around me and the Excel spreadsheet up and all that sort of stuff. But it's certainly not what I spend my whole time. I know you in the previous one with Matt Light, he just said, like, I just only do that. I only do lists, and which is fair enough, But
right, we're back. We've had a change of venue. We are now on Zoom because it's working a bit better. So we'll move on to your collection. This is definitely a hell of a lot better from how I'm seeing you, and like with video movements, etc. So, what is the size of your collection, and what armies do you use the most?
Okay, so I sort of scanned around a bit earlier, and you saw a bit of my collection, but I don't really know the size of my collection. I know I have. I mean, I'm not. I think considering I've only been in the hobby again, buying stuff and playing a lot, I've probably got a really big collection for someone who's realistically only been playing again for 2 years. So I've got have I got all of the armies now? No, I don't have all the armies. I don't have most of the elf armies because elves suck.
Amen.
But honestly, other than that, I think I have a bit of everything.
Including all the Hobbit era armies, because that's what I find.
Okay. It depends whether you're asking built or not built.
Either or.
So I've got a bag of Gundabad's that I've just. These are the latest editions. I got them from Barney Menzies at 7th City Collectibles not so long ago. So I can't remember what inspired me. I think I remember I had an idea. I thought I want to do like an all-hero evil Hobbit army, because why not? I wanted to do Bolg, Azog, the Necromancer, and some of the Hunter Orc heroes or something like that. And I thought, that'd be fun. And then I thought, I'd quite like to paint Azog, so I'll get that. And I got a couple of them. I thought, well, actually, I really like the Gundabad Orc warriors, so I might as well get all of this at the same time. And I already had a Gundabad troll that I'd picked up secondhand ages ago that's just unpainted. So I thought, well, I've basically got a Gundabad army now, so I just bought the rest of it. And then now it's just there. So I have that. I have the Iron Hills, and I have some Thror. I have the Thorin's Company. I've got an Eagle and Radagast on a sleigh. I don't have Beorn. So there's some gaps. A Hobbit definitely don't have as much of. No Thranduil Halls, no Lake Town or Dale. But I think those are probably the only gaps. Throw some others at me, and then I'll probably be able to tell you if I've not got them. But
good question.
But mostly everything.
I was going to say, when people say, I've got most of the armies, I automatically think Lord of the Rings era armies. I don't think Hobbit era armies. I don't know why. Well, maybe because they're too expensive or whatnot. But
and I suppose you're more likely to have a Lord of the Rings era army because they've been around longer and you've probably acquired stuff over a long time. But I do have. I certainly have the makings of most armies, because I mentioned earlier that I wanted to try and collect everything. So I have like three Arnorian soldiers, for example, and Arvedui or the king. Is it King Arvedui? Yeah. So I have him and 3 warriors of Arnor, and that's it. But I have a little bit, so that's enough, because I wanted to collect them just in case. So, but in terms of armies I use most, I think at the moment it's probably Mordor or Orcs in some way, shape, or form. In the last year or so, I liked playing Sauron with a load of Orcs and Sauron with Ringwraiths, and then I did Sauron with a catapult, and then I did Witch King with like a load of Morannons, and that worked really well. I played that a few times. That was quite good. But they're probably the most common at the moment. I really like Minas Tirith as well, for good armies.
Yeah.
And I played a lot of Khazad-dûm last year, for a good army as well. Probably in terms of most used in the last year, I'd say Sauron and Orcs, Witch King and Orcs, and Durin, Blood of Hearthguard, and some wardens, shield wardens. So yeah, that was probably.
Was it because I remember at Mark's event you took Sauron and 2 Felbeasts?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Yeah, I played you Lord's Battle with that. That was
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's good fun, and that was because I had this idea in my head. What could be better than Sauron and 2 Ringwraiths that dominate? But the problem is the game doesn't really work for all hero armies generally, and certainly doesn't now with match play. So, but it's really cool. It was such a fun army, and I actually did all right. I'd won like half the games in that tournament, so I was quite chuffed with that. Actually, I'd consider playing it again, but I don't think people like playing it. As you probably attest to, Luke.
Yeah, well, I can't remember my full list, but I had Glorfindel and...
I was going to say, well, you were elves then, yeah?
And something, yeah. And I was like, okay, I can deal with the 2 Ringwraiths quite easily, and I did.
Yeah.
But then just Sauron did Sauron.
Just swinging around his Mace of Doom and stuff. Yeah, he's pretty hard. And I that's why I think from that tournament on, I liked picking up Sauron, and then you naturally go, okay, well, the problems with this army are the Ringwraiths, the Felbeasts, essentially. Yeah. So Sauron's great. So what can I add to him to make him good? So then I started adding, like, I did the Catapult because I thought, oh, that'd be good, and some Morgul Knights for that. And so, yeah, it was good fun expanding it. I think I probably played with him enough for now, but he'll come back. I'm sure he will come back. But I'm desperate to try out a load of the armies that I've done in the last 6 months that I've just not got a game with at all, basically. So
yeah, fair enough.
Cool.
Yeah.
So still on your collection of your vast collection, what is your favourite mini you own?
You know what? Genuinely,
anything, whatever.
Genuinely, it's actually the newest mini that I've got.
Oh, he's up.
I'm up. So. This little guy.
Oh, nice.
He is absolutely gorgeous. And I don't know what it is about him. There's just something about his kind of beastliness, the Keeper of Dungeons, that you just... I don't know. There's the legs, the mighty legs. And
I was going to say, his legs are...
They are
solid.
Absolutely amazing. And I just think it's got so much character. I don't know why. I just love this model. And... I don't often buy a model and paint it within 48 hours, but this one, and I don't even need it for an army, really. I mean, yes, I could throw it into an Azog army, but I just saw it and I thought, yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, he's definitely, maybe it's just because he's fresh and he's new and it's exciting, but yeah, he's probably my favourite so far. But in terms of ones I've had for a while, I love the Mordor, Frodo and Sam in Mordor with the Mordor orc armor. They're really cool.
Yeah.
Some of the character sort of like the Fellowship sculpts are really nice, but like the Breaking of the Fellowship hobbits are amazing. They are so good. The ones where they're running through the woods and stuff.
Yes.
They're really cool. And yeah, probably some of like the special ones, like Éowyn and the Witch King doing the swinging around, and the Death of Gothmog and stuff like that. Like the proper what do you call them?
The dioramas they brought.
Yeah, dioramas. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, those are great. So, but even one that I really like that probably gets underrated is the dead Isildur and Elendil on the base.
Yes. That's
really cool because I think I had that for years, and it was like the only model in the Lord of the Rings collection that I really had. And I had like that, a Minas Tirith warrior and stuff, and they were kind of the only cores that I had. And I had Elendil here, and my dad found my old Isildur in his shed. It had fallen out of
nice.
It had fallen out of a toolbox that I gave to him because he was like, "Oh, I need a toolbox. You're using that?" And I said, "Oh no, I've got I've got a fluffy Warhammer case now to keep them safe in.
Yeah.
And that guy had somehow been left in there. And he gave it me
Oh, wow.
not that long ago, like only a couple of months ago. And it's still got my old paint job on it, which is the only of my sort of original paint jobs that I've got. So that kind of holds a little special place in my heart now, because it's cool little miniature. So yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, they're really nice though.
So out of your collection, what do you think is the most underrated model?
Are we talking? Yeah, go on.
Sculpt or profile, or an example of each, or
yeah. I literally listened to all of you. I downloaded all the audio of your questions and listened to them while I'm driving around for work. And this one, I genuinely don't know. I should have prepared for this. I'm looking at my cabinet now. I'm looking at it, but underrated sculpts. I honestly, I don't know. I think some that are underrated are probably the original Hobbits, the 4 Fellowship Hobbits, because I think there's so many of them out there, and they're like 10 a penny. You can probably buy Frodo, Sam, and the 2. You can get them, and nobody really wants them because they're in a Fellowship of the Ring army and all that. So they're not like got high premium, but actually when you paint them up and you look at the detail, and especially on such small models, they are really very nice models. Oh, I see you're getting them out. Oh, yeah, and you've got the plinth. Yeah, I've got the plinth somewhere down there as well.
Those ones at the back.
Yeah, those just the standard plain Hobbits, and actually there's something quite characterful about them.
Mine.
Yeah,
I really enjoy painting mine, and I painted those 2 years ago, and still remember vividly painting that set and really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's really nice. And there are a couple of other, Sam in particular. I think Sam has some of the best sculpts for any of the characters. And the one from Shelob, where he's got he's got Sting and the light of Evenstar, not Evenstar, Erendil, and he's that one's really cool. And also there's the other one where he's pulling the sword out,
the Ellen Wheel one.
Yeah. That's
just
really...
like to say, I painted one of them up for my Rangers of the Thillian army,
and yeah, those 2 are definitely underrated, because maybe it's because not everyone has them, or everyone has a Sam. So therefore, they're not desperate to go out and buy loads of other Sams. But yeah, they're really cool. In terms of the game, I don't know. I just don't. I really like Easterlings, and I think they're probably more underrated than people think. Just having pikes is underrated generally. So in the game, I think I'd quite like to try them out properly, but I'm not a good enough player to really.
I was going to say, I don't think that any of the top players have really tried them in earnest.
No. I know Will Champion played with them a lot, but usually more in competitive, in friendly games and thematic tournaments. So I don't think he was desperately sort of smashing it at people in or anything like that. But I really do. I think they've got potential.
As I say, the one person that we know who bucks the trend a lot, Mr. Alistair King, is lockdown painted an Easterling army, so he's keen to get them moving, which will be very interesting to see what he does with them, because his lists are very not the norm.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a good player. I mean, that's the thing. Alistair's just he's a great player, and he'll probably be able to do something that other people don't. And but yeah, I think pikes. I think generally, if you've got 3 dice in a combat plus a banner, I mean, it's rare that you're not going to get a 6. So I guess it's you more. And when you do win, you've got 4 dice or 3 dice to kill something. So I don't know. I don't know. It makes sense in my head, but obviously, there's probably a reason why the best players aren't taking it. But, yeah.
Nice. So, still on your collection, but not really. You mentioned that you've collected throughout the years, and there's been a lot of made-to-orders recently, the last couple of years or so. Are there specific models that you want to return for a made-to-order that you don't already have, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's the ones for the Rohan stuff. There's a couple from that I definitely want to get the Gimli sat on the Uruk-hai, because that's just a lovely, lovely model. But in terms of ones that haven't released yet, I would really like to see Gildor come back. Gildor is probably the only elf I actually really like. And I don't know why I've got this thing in my head that he's good. I don't really know why, but I remember, maybe it's just a fond memory from when I read the books when I was like 12 or something, because I think I've probably read the first bit of the Fellowship more than any of the others, because I tried a lot when I was younger to read it and just couldn't, because it's badly written and it's just old-fashioned. And yeah, I know that's controversial, but Lord of the Rings is not well written. It's really not. I don't care what you say.
I was exactly the same. I've read like the first 100 pages of the Fellowship of the Ring probably 3 or 4 times before I eventually pushed forward and read the whole of it.
Yeah, and I like the stories a lot more than I like the writing. The writing style is laboured and just old-fashioned. I mean, it's nearly 100 years old or whatever it is. Well, 50 years old or 60 years old, isn't it? But still, anyway. So I read the start, and especially for 11-year-old, I don't know how. Whenever people say they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm 11 and I bought it when I watched the films and I read all of it in like 6 months," I just don't get it. I just don't get how you could do that. You know. Why weren't you reading, like, I don't know, kids' books when you were 10? It just doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, I read Gildor a lot because it was like early. So and I really liked. There's something about kind of ethereal. He was a proper elf. Like he was kind of floating about and like vanished, and then he kind of came and went. And there was just I really like that. So I'd love to see Gildor come back, because it's like insane that he's not around, and I don't understand why he's not. So I'd love to see Gildor and maybe some of the old metal wood elves come back as well. That'd be quite nice. But that's what I'd like to see on Made of Wood.
So we'll move more on to your gaming side of things. And you mentioned earlier that you played 40k when you were younger. Do you play any other systems now?
Honestly, I don't think I'd have time to. I play a lot of board games with a couple of my like old friends from school. So I play Lords of Waterdeep. It's a game, Dungeons and Dragons kind of game, but it's like a resource building game. Because my friends are into like the strategy games and board games generally, but they've never really been miniature painters and models, and it's quite high buy-in. So I play a lot of those with them. So you know, your Settlers of Catan and all that sort of stuff, and Carcassonne and the usual kind of board games with my mates. But Waterdeep, I definitely recommend Lords of Waterdeep. It's really good fun. It's one of the few board games that I've played where I don't care that I lose every time, because it's just great fun. But in terms of sort of, I've dipped my toe into other things a few times. Like I really wanted to play Black Powder, which is the warlord kind of Napoleonic era war game, because I love the Sharp games Sharp books and TV series when I was a kid, and I just love the idea of building up proper ranks of people with muskets and all that sort of stuff. But I've just never met anyone who plays it. Never. And I don't really also want to be playing with like most of the people who are into like Napoleonic era war games are like really, really into it, and they're like obsessed over like recreating exact battles and stuff. So I think I'd probably not enjoy the game that much. But I've got a set from the Battle of Balaclava set from Warlord, which was really nice, and I'm going to paint that up eventually, probably. But so I've dipped my toe into that, but never really taken to it. I mentioned 40k and Fantasy and Sigmar. I do those. I did play Sigmar quite a lot just before I got into Lord of the Rings, and then they kind of changed it again, and I just don't like 40k or Sigmar, because it's all about like the rule. The power creep seems to just always happen no matter what happens, and too often not in both systems you have ways of kind of destroying stuff of your opponents without them really having a chance to do anything about it. There's almost no strategy involved in either game, I don't think. And in particular, I used to love 40k, and I can't remember the editions. I always get the numbers mixed up. But basically, just before Apocalypse, it was a really nice 40k edition. I really enjoyed that. That's what got me into war gaming. properly, and having armies and building points lists and stuff like that. And I loved that. And when I was playing Necrons and all this sort of stuff in the Imperial Guard, and then they brought in Apocalypse where you could buy like these stupid big tanks, and you'd spend like 70 quid on a tank, and that tank would then blow up all of your opponent's troops, and it'd be like, oh great, well I'm 13, I can't afford a 70 quid tank, and also I don't want to play a game where I have to bring like 100 models onto the table only for you to take half of them off in the first turn anyway. So, and 40k has never changed since then. I don't know how people can think it's a good game, because you play, you build your army, and then you go, all right, well, let's roll the dice. All right, I've got priority. Well, I'll shoot all of your guys, and then you've got a quarter of your army left, and then we'll like spend the next an hour waiting for you to slowly die. And it's, I mean, I'm sure, maybe I'm missing nuances, and I'm sure there are people out there who are screaming at the screen going, what, you crazy, it's amazing, it's all about this and that and the other, the Alpha Strike and blah, blah, but it's just nonsense as far as I'm concerned. So essentially, as soon as I found people who were playing SPG and realised that SPG is as good a game as I thought it was just from reading the rules when I was a kid and reading the magazines, there's no other game realistically for me, because this is just, and I love the models and stuff. So, but I just think that I don't know how anyone doesn't like it. I don't know how people can like other games opposed to it. It's just, it's so well crafted, and the thing I love most about it is the individual combats mean something. So there's none of this like getting a bucket of dice and pouring them all on the table, taking out all the sixes and going, right, okay, that's those, and then pouring the rest of them back on the table and going, right, okay, well, there's 10 of your guys dead. And it's like, it's just sort of, it just feels like it's all probabilities and maths at that point, because you know, if you've got 100 shots because you've managed to get the right stratagem and your 20 guys can shoot 5 times, then you know you're going to hit with 33 of those shots, or 66 of those shots, and then you know you're going to take out 10 models because you're going to get, or whatever, and then it just feels like, all right, well, I can, if it was all about probabilities and stuff, I'd just, you know, play a game, or exactly. So yeah. Whereas this, there's you individual model, you can move it, and it makes a difference. And also, you know, a Hobbit can beat Sauron.
Yeah,
it's not against the realms of possibility. You know, you can throw a pebble at a Mummock and it can run off the board, which has happened in a game against Scott before. So I played against Scott White. It was great. I played against Scott Whitefoot with the Fellowship of the Ring. Pippin launched a pebble at the Mummock, wounded it, and it stampeded off the table and basically won me the game. So, and that just does nothing like that happens in 40k or fantasy. It's just, So yeah, I've tried, but there's just nothing that's taken over yet. Until Jay ruins it. No, I don't
think he will. I was going to say the game's been in a similar position since its inception, I think, and I think that's part of why people who've taken over it have not changed anything really.
I think that original rule system that Rick Priestley came up with way back when, the simple kind of 1 versus 1. Yes, it's a dice roll, but ultimately, you know that if you put enough dice into it, you're going to win and get a 6, and then it's all about how you're going to work it out. I think that's very elegant, and it works at such low levels, like whether it's a scenario with 10 models in, or battle companies or whatever. But it also seems to scale really well. For some reason, I don't know how it works or why, but it just seems to work really well at every level. So
I was going to say, it's so simple. It's you roll the dice, I roll the dice, highest wins.
Yeah, right. And you can kind of teach people that as well. Like, I finally convinced my girlfriend to take part and play a couple of games with me, and she sort of got it. I mean, she's not great at the strategy. That's the thing. She understood the rules. She knows how to roll the dice, and she knows generally. Oh yeah, okay. If I win, I win. But it's all the moving and the strategy which she doesn't like. So which is fine. But it just shows how simple it can be. I think anyone can pick it up and hopefully get something out of it.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I can speak for the both of us when we say amateurs aren't going to do
that. Never going to.
You never know.
At the start of lockdown, there's a part of start of lockdown where it was like a week or so in, she was like, maybe at some point I'll play this, and it's what, 5 months later.
You see, you gave up. You clearly gave up. I got that. I got exactly that message, and then I just kept at it, the whole. And it took about a month or two of lockdown before she caved. But
okay,
yeah. So you might have missed the boat. You might have missed the boat because it's lockdown's easing out and all this sort of stuff now. I got it. Struck while the iron was hot.
Cool. So moving on then. You mentioned sort of the last year or so that you started playing tournaments a little bit more, and especially last year. Was it more fun, or were you trying to be competitive in certain tournaments, or what would you prefer?
I think I've gained a reputation for being quite a thematic player. So I quite enjoy taking fun lists, or at least themed lists. I mean, not necessarily. I guess over the time, the more you play a game, the more you get better at the actual moving of stuff and the strategy involved in moving models around. I guess the more you kind of start thinking and toying with competitiveness. But I think ultimately, I quite enjoy a gamble, and I quite enjoy a bit of fun. So I'm never going to be one of those people who sort of calculates certain things and goes, actually, I'm going to move my Riders of Rohan back this turn because logically that's the right move. I'll go, I'm pretty sure it's the right move, but I want to just charge stuff. So like, I don't have the attention to detail enough to actually be competitive, because I think I can spend do everything right for the first hour of a game and then make like a major crucial decision halfway through, which will lose me the game. And often I can go back to a game and go, yeah, that caused a mistake. And I think it's just ultimately I'm not going to pay attention to it enough. And I think that if you try and be competitive when you're you're not really a very good player, then I think you end up actually kind of being a bit upset by it, or getting sort of frustrated and going, oh, why did I make that one mistake that I had to make every time, and then you get angry. And I don't want to get into that. I just want to enjoy it. So I think over the last year I've probably gotten more competitive as the year went on, and I might even try and compete a bit this year, maybe not take so many obviously flawed lists, but realistically I don't think it's going to happen. I'm not that bothered. But I think the one thing I would like is that, because I know a lot of the competitive players like yourselves, and I've interviewed people for the podcast and stuff like that, that I've become friends with everyone who's in the competitive scene, and the competitive players usually are the ones who are going to everything. So I'd quite like to play more games with them, actually, because like you get to be friends with everyone, and I often end up just playing with like the thematic people and the painters who don't go to every tournament. They go to like their local tournament usually, and obviously there are some people who are exceptions, that like me, who travel around just because we enjoy it, and even though we're crap. But I would quite like to play more of your World Champions and your Alistair Kings and your Ed Balls and your J Clares, just because I wanted to hang out with them. I guess it'd be nice. It'd be nice to play a game with them rather than just be the first game of the tournament and then send them on their way off to table one while I stay at the bottom table.
Because what's your, moving slightly off topic, what's your community like around? Because you're Lincoln based.
I have built my community. That is the short answer. Yeah, and the reason I started going to tournaments was because nobody played Middle-earth, and I'd mentioned it a few people, and it was kind of people were like, "Oh yeah, cool, you played Middle-earth, how quirky," and it's like that sort of thing. And I was like, "Oh, people still play that, do they?" And things like that. So I managed to convince one of my friends, who at the time was working at the as a painter at the local gaming club, and I managed to convince him to play it, and we had a great time playing it. We were just us two for a while. But he ended up changing jobs and all that sort of stuff. So I don't really see him as much anymore because he's moved away. But Jack Darlington, shout out to you if you're watching. But I think once that happened, I was like, oh, there's not really anyone around. And so that's when I started going to tournaments, and I went to a few, and I just realised, oh, I can drive now. I'm like older than I was when I was 15, so I can drive to a tournament, and I've got a job, so I can afford it as long as I'm not, crazy about it. And then I went crazy with it. So, but no, I started building the tournament at the local community essentially because the Pelennor Fields box, it was coming out, and the local club there was a bit of sort of hype growing. There were people who were like, oh yeah, I'd quite like to do that. I'd quite like to play it. And then Pelennor Fields came out, and there's this big box, and as with any new GW box, like there's the usual, you know, the kind of, if you go to your club, there's like a couple of regular gamers who will be always there. They'll always be jumping on the next bandwagon. They always play the new games, and they'll buy them all, and they all get into it. And there was a thing where everyone got into it because there was a few people that got into it, and I kind of encouraged a few of them to keep going, and we set up a slow grow league and stuff like that. So I set it up, and I set up the slow grow league, and there's no need to do to airs and graces for here, is there? So I set it up, and we got like a solid half dozen people who have now stuck at it, and we've got like a little group of us that play a bit, and it's great because they're all the kind of gamers who realistically don't have much more time than maybe a couple of nights a week, or maybe a night every fortnight or something like that. But so they're quite happy to stick with this system as long as they get a game every couple of weeks. So which is exactly like me. So it works really well. So I've managed to do it. I've managed to convert some people.
That's good then, because we don't have a club. Our nearest club is Bristol. However, Bristol or Swindon, yeah. I think there are some gaming clubs in and around, but they're not big enough really, or we've not heard about them, etc. So we just play in my garage because I've got a nice big double garage. So
yeah, why not?
And there's 4 or 5 of us around here, so it is pretty handy.
Oh, that works quite well. It was a bit of a shame actually recently because I was I've moved away from my hometown about an hour up the road, so not massive, but and I saw in the old gaming group that I used to go in and I used to play mostly 40k in, some guy had posted saying, does anyone play Middle Earth here in Boston? And like nobody commented on it. I was like, no, this is really sad. And I commented underneath, I said, I'm from Boston and all this, and I have a little group up in Lincoln, and he was like, oh, I'm 17, so I can't drive, or 16, whatever it was. So, and I was like, oh, and realistically, I'm not going to be able to get down to spend an hour just driving there to play it. So I felt really sad though, because that was me. Yeah. Like 10 years ago when I was 17, I was thinking, oh, I want to do that. But you can't win them all, I suppose.
So when you build a new army or decide to paint one of your armies in your collection that isn't
yeah, that's accurate.
Do you build an army for a tournament, or do you paint, like, I'm going to paint a box of Warriors of Rohan? I say that because they're on my desk at the moment. Or do you pick, like, because they look cool, or because of the rules, or...
I think I pick them because of the rules, actually. Which, considering I play for theme largely, it's surprising, I guess, to now work it out in my head. But no, I pick because I think, I like the sound of that combination, or I haven't seen that on the tabletop before, or I haven't really considered playing with Azog before, or like I mentioned earlier with Azog and the Necromancer and Bolg as a kind of silly all hero army. Those sorts of things spark my interest, and so that's probably what caused it. I flick through as you do, and when I'm finished, I'm coming to the end of a project. I'm kind of lining up the ideas for other ones, or so I know already that I've got the Gunderbands to do after the Easterlings, and but I do look at the rules probably first and foremost. But in reality, it's probably more caused by someone saying something like, "Oh yeah, these are really good. Have you heard of this combination? Oh, isn't it great when and that sort of thing?" And I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that does sound quite cool." And then I'll look up myself, and maybe someone will say, yeah, Azog's great because of the Master of the Battle thing, or I play against Azog, and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, he's pretty good. And then I'll look in the book myself and go, oh yeah, he comes with like that cool troll and that cool thing. So I'll end up starting on what someone will tell me, like some filthy army list, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. And then I'll go and go, yeah, that sounds great. But then I'm going to put like the fluffy stuff and ruin your army list, and I'll like, I'll make it like really fun, and you know, I'll paint the models I want, and then people will say, oh yeah, we talked about this, didn't we, a while back? And I'll say, yeah, I did, yeah. So why didn't you do what I said? It's like, yeah, but you know, I don't know, I just wanted to paint some Gundabad berserkers and not loads, so I just did 4 or whatever, you know, that sort of thing. When or you know, people would say like your Reavers or whatever, they say, oh yeah, Reavers are really good, and I'll say, yeah, they sound great. I'll have like 2 of them in my list because I don't really want to paint more than 2, so I'll just do the rest of it, you know, that sort of stuff. So yeah, but it's definitely a mix. It's definitely a mix. Because I like to reckon that I come up with some fun, funky ideas for lists that can be themey, but also can be strangely competitive in weird ways. For the GT, was it, or the Throne Schools? I think it was the Throne of Schools last year. No, it was the GT. It was definitely GT. I did the Mummock War Leader, and I went and I kind of had this idea in my head, this really smart, which I thought was really smart idea in my head, that if you have less stuff on the floor than you have on the Mummock.
I remember talking to you about this.
Yeah.
I remember talking about this.
Yeah, and so the idea was, all right, okay, if you've got a War Mummock, the leader, War Leader, because the other one's not as good really. If you've got that, and then you've got 12 guys on top, and you've got the leader and the Mummock, which count for that's 14, because they count as models, and then you have 13 on the floor. Then if everyone dies on the floor, it doesn't really matter. So because they've got to deal with a Mummock. So I thought, this is the way forward, and I actually did. I won all 3 of my games at the GT, and I kind of wanted to take it back, that army, to another competitive tournament at some point. But
because there was you and someone else running a similar list.
Yeah. Well, what I liked about this was that I mentioned it to a few people like yourself and Chris Murfitt as well.
Yeah.
And Chris Murfitt then stole my idea, made it better, and then won another tournament with it. And I was like, damn! Like, I will take credit for that list, and I'm sure Chris would back me up on this. But he definitely made it better. But I was like, yeah. So I think I could come up with good stuff and fun ideas that make for interesting games. But I'm probably not a good enough player to pull it off. So I'm not that bothered really, but yeah, usually it's some weird combination that means that I go, right, I'm going to buy a War Mummock and also 3 Hasherin, and then I'll have a great list, and then I'll end up painting it, and it'll all go wrong when I actually roll dice.
I was going to say, it's like planting that seed of an idea, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And rolling with it and seeing how far you can go.
Yeah, it's the ball rolling thing, isn't it? You just go, oh, okay, well, if I do this and that, and then I finally, so, you know, I don't know, someone might say, casually mention to me, oh, if you get Kurdan, then you can put him in an Arnor list, and then you don't need to have Melbeth, so you can have like a load of other stuff. And I'll be like, I see that. Or you know, that I don't think that's worked anymore. But those sorts of things make me think, oh yeah, okay, that'll get me to use my 3 Arnor guys that I've got in the collection, and I can buy more Arnor guys to actually make an army. So it's like, fills my collector need and my gaming need all, and my painting need all at once. So yeah, but yeah, it's a weird hobby.
So more into the gaming aspect, are there certain factions or armies or legions that you think are up there as top tier? Are the ones that you think, yeah, they're going to win, sort of thing?
Yeah. Elves are just broken. They're just absolutely broken. No, I'm not really qualified to answer it because I don't play at the top tier enough. I know they're a game. The thing is, I think a lot of people probably think of me as like a thematic player, that I might really look down on people who play competitively or like have like red army lists or whatever, but I really don't. I think that all that competitive stuff is absolutely fine. I think it's brilliant when someone comes up with crazy combinations of red armies and like there's a whole array of ways to play the game, and it's brilliant that I can bring a super thematic army and play against someone with a red faction and it be amazing, you know, with like the Spider Queen and some nonsense of the Shadow Lord and some, I don't know, all that sort of stuff. I love playing against those things, but so I actually don't really care that there's a top tier list, because I quite like just playing anyone. But there are factions that I hate playing, and I hate playing elves, largely because I don't play them myself because I don't like them. And then I'm always like, damn you and your fight five, stop rolling sixes. But so I think some of the crazy elven heroes, like your Glorfindels, your Elrond, I think Elrond's overpowered. He's got far too much going for him. I mean, nobody ever says this, but like he's got like everything. He's got Lord of the West. He's got knocking people down magically. He's got like this buff he gives to all of the people with bows. Like, how many more things do you want? Oh yeah, he's got a ring of power, and he's got it's just all of these real, and then he's got foresight, and it seems endless. So Elrond, I think, and I don't think anyone ever says this, but Elrond is far too powerful. But there are reasons. It's like saying, oh, Aragorn's too powerful. It's like, well, yeah, but he's Aragorn. It's like Sauron's too powerful, or Smaug's too powerful. I don't really know the competitive, stuff enough. I know that gambling, for example, came up a lot, but I didn't really care that he came up a lot as long as I didn't play him all the time. The same with Iron Hills. I don't really like ballistas, Iron Hills ballistas, but whenever I see them on the other side of the tabletop, I think, oh, bloody hell, another Iron Hills ballista, and I think, okay, fair enough, but. I think the game is largely very well balanced. So and every time anything that's too overpowered comes along, it's relatively quickly nipped in the bud. So because Jay is such a competitive player, I think he's quite happy to nip things in the bud and balance things out. But equally, I wonder sometimes whether he goes too far towards the theme stuff. I think actually, taking some of the bonuses away to allies actually probably ruins the game a little bit, because people can't, theme up, make their own soldiers and do their own thing, or even come up with shonky alliances that make the game more spicy and fun. Because we all love the game. Most people are playing the game because ultimately it's Lord of the Rings, and we like to recreate the stuff. But it's fun just coming with your Easterlings are going up against a stupid army of Khazad-dûm and Lothlorien or whatever, which doesn't really make any sense. But if it works, it's like, oh, okay, this is challenging as a game. Like and now play. And I do the theme bit when I'm writing the list, or when I'm building the terrain, or when I'm painting my models, or when I'm having a joke at the quiz afterwards, or whatever. But when I'm on the game on the board, I very rarely actually care if it's a really ultra thematic matchup. I mean, it's nice when you get the real thematic matchups, when it's like, you've got Theoden and the Riders of Rohan all against, Moran and Orcs. That's great. I love it when that sort of stuff happens. You think, oh yeah, this is but most of the time it's not. It's some weird kind of Easterlings versus Rivendell, or it's like, well, so it doesn't. And blue on blue, it just doesn't bother me. But I think I've just ruined your next question, haven't I? Is that the next one? It's somewhere later, isn't it? Sorry, I'll be quiet because I can remember there is more questions on that.
You kind of covered a bit of your, like, what you think is some of the most overpowered models. But what's your favourite points level to play at?
Oh, I don't really like the small games that much, because I just feel like there's not enough going on to make it that interesting. So I'd say 400 or 500 are probably not that great.
500 I really struggle to write lists for.
Yeah, I think it's because naturally, I mean, you kind of want to have like a big hero and maybe like another smaller hero, and often at 500 you kind of stuck with this middle ground where you kind of, well, I can maybe have two minor heroes, but like nobody really wants an army led by Haldir and Rúmil or whatever. It's not quite the same, and so I think 500's not great. I think it starts getting good at 600, 650, and actually I don't really mind above that. There's some games levels where it just gets a bit ridiculous. Like I played. I think he mentioned it in one of the other videos with Will Champion. He had this tournament where it was like 1,250 points. And that was great fun as like a one-off, but I wouldn't want to play that regularly because it's just too much. A, it's too many models to move, and B, I don't know whether it really has as much kind of fun once you've got everything. It makes it a less tactical game, but I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed it because I took 3 trebuchets. And
I was going to say, was that the 3 trebuchets?
Yeah. I did. I've taken 3 trebuchets twice. I took them to Throne of Skulls. I think just after the new edition came out, because I thought, I was like, oh my god, siege weapons are amazing. And at that point, nobody had even mentioned siege weapons, and I was like, siege weapons, these look great. And then suddenly they were like a big thing. But I'm not saying that I started that trend, but they were really good. But yeah, so I like taking 3 trebuchets, just mainly because of I love that moment where Gandalf like smacks Denethor on the face with his staff, and sort of says, takes charge and rides up the ramparts and stuff like that. I love that moment. So, I quite like that theme, and just the trebuchets are a key part of that moment. So, I can't remember what we were talking about. Oh, points levels. So yeah, I'd say probably 600 plus, but really it hits its sweet spot at 700, 800, probably 800 actually, because then you can get a big hero in. You can get an Azog or an Aragorn in there, and some other stuff.
And have a normal army.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So yeah, I'd say that.
Excellent. Nice. So more onto the event side of things now. Obviously, you've been to many in the last year. What awards would you like to see awarded out at most events?
I mean, you've got to have the podium spots. That's great. I think it's always fun to have a wooden spoon, because just because it's very demoralising if you're the last person of the tournament, and if it's all a bit of a joke about it, or you get like a nice wooden spoon, or you might get a ticket to next year's event, or at my tournament I gave away like a game. Oh, there you go, so you got one as well.
That's the trophy? This is for our upcoming event.
Oh, okay. It's one thing I haven't ever won, sadly, but I was very close to getting the wooden spoon at 7 stones, but I've never quite gotten it. But you got to try harder. I know. We really struggled. But Tom Harrison's girlfriend, I can't remember her name, Lily, I think it is. Lily. She had a terrible army list, and she couldn't even. I don't think she even knew how to play the game properly either.
Is that the one with Build the Pony?
Yeah. She had a great. It was a great army, but it was a terrible army, if that makes sense. But so she lost. Anyway, you need a spoon because it's so demoralising if you're at the bottom and you've put a lot of effort into your army and you've had fun usually, but nobody wants to be last, so it's nice to have something. So I gave away like a prize for a different board game, I think it was. Say, you need to try something else, clearly. Okay. Or, you have a joke about that. But I also think I think painting and all the usual. I think all the usual awards you should have, but like the painting and sportsmanship and stuff like that. I don't think sportsmanship is necessarily essential. I've won a fair few of them myself, but I don't think they're necessarily important. I think it's difficult because sportsmanship, especially when you're at ultra competitive level, means that a lot of the I always worry that it's people who know you and like you as a person, and that actually it's not rewarding what it's meant to usually reward. And because I've been to a lot of tournaments, and also I do the podcast, so people have heard of me sometimes, so they're like, oh, you do the podcast, or oh yeah, I've seen some of your videos or whatever. Then I always worry that that's kind of given me an edge, and I hate the idea that people have voted me just because they were glad that they're on the podcast or whatever. So I don't know, but anyway, but sports, I still think it's worth rewarding, even if it's just to make people think, oh, you need to be a bit more sportsman-like, that would be good. But the main awards that I think should be awarded blanket every tournament is a random points level, random placing, sorry. So they do it in Stirling, Scotland, and it's a great one because it's just a random place, like 17th or 12th or 9th or whatever, and it's like rolled randomly on the day, and they say, and if you get into 9th place, or they might say at the end, we've got the secret prize and the number is 9th and it's you, and well done, everyone's like, hey. But it's better if people know it already, because then you could sort of try and game yourself into 12th or whatever. I just think that's fun. But it also rewards those people that perhaps, if you're in the middle of the tournament, and say 40 people play a tournament or something, then and you kind of know you're not going to get the top spot, and you know you're not going to lose all your games either. So, but you're in the middle, and you kind of those people are getting nothing. So it'd be nice to get like a middle of the tables award or something like that, or at least a random one. Yeah, and I like that at Seven Stones they do like this weird way of ranking things, like a World Cup. So you enter kind of 4 different leagues at once, and
you're in the groups, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's like I'm not a football person, so I can't really explain it very well. But like you play all 4 people in your group, and then the winner of that goes into a top tier, and then the second place goes to second, and third and fourth, and then you're playing against those people. So you feel like you've got a chance, sort of. It's like seeded, which that's quite cool because then there's a prize for more people. And I just think if you're going to give out prizes, and I think you should, in a sense, because people are paying money for it, and I think you can't just be squirreling all that away into whatever. Maybe if you do a really cheap tournament because you've paid nothing for the entry fee, but I think because everyone expects to pay like 25, 30 quid or whatever for a ticket, you want to just chuck a load of that into prizes, I think, and do as much as you can. So
nice. I was gonna say, I know I've thought about it before, and I don't know if I was spoken to Luke about it, but saying having like the most average player, so they literally finish bang in the middle. Yeah. So like you got 30 players,
3 wins, 3 losses.
Yeah, you got
0 VP difference.
It's whoever comes close to equal wins and losses and VPs, and you're like, right, cool, you are the most average player. Here's a prize.
Yeah,
just something different.
Yeah, and A, it's different, and B, it rewards those people who come along to every tournament and they do well, but they don't win all their games and they kind of walk away with nothing, and that's kind of sad. But especially if they're not like Scott Whitefoot and his amazing painting skills, because we can't all be hobby geniuses as well. But yeah, we should reward all those things as well because it's just impressive.
Yeah. So at tournaments, do you prefer good or evil? Good v evil, sorry, or blue on blue, or do you think like one of them has more of a drawback than the
other? As a game, I prefer blue on blue, if I'm honest. I just think it gives you more variety to enjoy each game. That I started touching on it earlier, so I had to cut myself off. But I think I understand the kind of argument that it's better thematically when you've got good versus evil because it recreates the books and films and stuff. I get that, and it makes it more immersive and stuff like that. But ultimately, I think it's a much more rich game when you've got double the number of armies that you might potentially play against, and it stops people going, oh, well, it's good versus evil, so I'll bring Lady of Light and I'll bring all this, and I think good versus evil is people like to think that it's a better balanced game or it's designed this way and blah blah blah. I really don't think it is. I think it's actually probably worse in some ways because Evil's just generally doesn't have as much to deal with some of the things that good has, like your Lady of Lights with the Aura of Terror and the Kurdans with his terror or whatever, or Army of the Dead or whatever. Like and then you've got an army like Angmar, which is like El's like, oh, who gives a shit about your like courage checks? It just doesn't really make so I know it's ostensibly designed as a good versus evil game, and the scenarios work very well as a good versus evil game because they're balanced properly. It's not just balance; it's the combatants against each other, which makes it right. So you've got ruffians against hobbits because that makes sense in the scenarios, and they're good versus evil, and they're pitched correctly at 700 points or 600 points or whatever it is. They're balanced out right, but 600 points of ruffians against 600 points of elves. I mean, it's just not balanced. So I don't think so anyway. Maybe I'm not right, but I enjoy when I'm an Easterling army against a Mordor army just as much as I would against a Dwarven army or whatever, just because it gives people more options. And I'm all for as a game. It's way better when people have a wider variety of things. So your legendary legions and whatever gives you another option, although some would argue it actually reduces it because they're more powerful than others and stuff, but at least I know, well, I could be playing against Rohan, or I could be playing against the Riders of Theoden, or I could be playing against Helm's Deep, Legendary Legion, or I could be playing against the, the Paths of the Druiden, or whatever. There's loads of options that way to build stuff. In the same way as, there's lots of different armies. Why would you restrict the game? It's just a game at the end of the day. They are just tokens that you're moving around. It's the piece of paper on, you're trying to move discs with nice things on, but discs around the table to play a game. And it's all kind of it's a construct in our head to make us understand how this game works. But ultimately it's all just chess, isn't it? It's just moving things forward and taking stuff and rolling dice and whatever. So, but yeah, I quite like Blue on Blue. So yeah.
Excellent. So now that here in the UK, anyway, lockdown is starting to ease a little bit and the future's looking a little bit brighter. Are there any upcoming events you want to attend? I know you're running one yourself soon, but are there any other ones that you've seen that you're wanting to go to? Or?
Well, yeah, I'm booked in to go to the Rings of Men, the Seventh City Collectibles in Nottingham. This is Barney and World Champions tournament. Barney set it up last year. It's like a kind of thematic-y tournament. You're meant to bring fluffy lists, and there are awards rewarding fluffy things and kind of theme and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I am and I'm not, because I don't want to go and play with masks and all this sort of stuff, but I also just really want to see everyone, and hopefully it'll be fun even with the masks. But I'm also looking forward to Steve Crow's tournament in October. Scouring of Cheshire, I think I always get them mixed up, that and Desolation and Stockport, but it's Scouring of Cheshire, isn't it? So I'm looking forward to that in October, because Steve's tournaments are amazing. I love Steve, he's a great guy, and we've get along really well, and we've sort of chatted a lot over the internet and whatnot. So I really like Steve and watching all his YouTube videos as well. But also the boards are great, and he and I love Element Games. Element Games is just so good as a gaming centre. It's probably my favourite that I've been to tournament-wise, because there's just everything there. It's got loads of room. It's got a massive shop where you can buy all your stuff. But it's got a bar, and it's got like places we can eat really close by. It's just, and nice. There's always an Airbnb like 2 minutes away. It's so good to go to. Whereas everyone sort of says Warhammer World is like the best tournaments in the world, and I've never been to a good hotel in Nottingham ever. I've gone to like 4 or 5 tournaments there, and I've stayed at a hotel a lot.
We've always got Airbnbs.
So I've just been really unlucky, but I've ended up with some horrible places, and it's just been really uncomfortable. And there's been like loud people next door, or there's someone having sex in the room above you, or there's a road nearby, or whatever. Or maybe I've just been unlucky, and I've stayed with a couple of people since then, and I actually just drive with Warhammer Net World now. But yeah, Element Games is probably the best place to go to as a tournament venue. And I know Firestorm Games in Wales was really good. I've only been there once though, so I haven't got it built up in my head as being somewhere as good. But I think it has a bar now as well, which is enticing. It's very enticing. Has it? Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I can't remember it very well. But there's a strange thing for me that my brother lives in Cardiff. So when I go to Cardiff, I kind of have to go and stay with him, I suppose. I mean, not I dislike my brother or anything, but it just kind of dilutes the tournament experience, because I want to go and see everyone and like go out and night out. But equally, I'm in the same city as my brother, and I've travelled like hundreds of miles to get here. So I should. I want to see him, but it's not the same tournament. So I think Stockport's great for that. That I just go there, see everyone, and it's all good fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hosting my tournament as well, as long as restrictions stay. I'm really worried about this event size thing. Like it doesn't feel like it's going to expand from being like maximum 30 people and stuff like that. I don't really know how I'm going to deal with that, but we'll see.
I was going to say, because so our tournament was supposed to be in July.
It's clashing it.
And unfortunately, we rearranged, and I know Matt King spoke to you, and we had a little conversation, and it's happened to be that our rearranged event is on the same.
Sure, yeah. And that ultimately, I don't think many people are going from Bristol to here, so it's not the end of the world, is it? But equally, it's a shame because I booked a ticket, hadn't I?
Yes.
To go to you, so I was going to go, but now I can't. But yeah, it's a shame that everything's moved back, and I wouldn't be surprised if, I know Seven Stones cancelled, even though it could have technically happened. They just sort of decided, well, you know, in the balance of probability, it's not going to be as fun. We're not going to be able to have the same sort of jovial atmosphere that we like to have because of masks and keeping each other apart and stuff like that. And I get it. I completely get it. And people, you know, make the decisions about whether they want to go to tournaments based on all that sort of stuff. But I want to go just because I want to see people. But
I was going to say, I'm up for doing. Like, I've been really cautious throughout the whole thing, and on the weekend, I'm pretty sure I will still be very cautious. Me and Luke have met up quite a few times, and we've both been very careful.
Yeah.
But I also want to let people have that little release and that little kind of little bit of normality, even if it's masks and after every game and before every game, sanitize your hands and only touch your own stuff, try not to touch terrain, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think we've got to return to, because it could be months that we're going to be social distancing and doing this sort of stuff, because you know, and realistically, we've got to start going back to some kind of normality eventually, and I'd like to see tournaments starting again, and even if not exactly the same, and you've got to do cleaning and all that sort of stuff, it you know, it's a hobby. You know, people going back to pubs and they're like, you know, arm in arm drunk and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, why can't we roll a few dice and you know, not get wasted and you know, breathe each other's air, you know. Yeah, but anyway,
that's a whole conversation for another time.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, indeed.
Does my head in.
Yeah, but either way, I'm definitely looking forward to tournaments generally.
Yeah, good
stuff.
So moving to kind of the community side of our questions, which player or army, I know you mentioned elves, do you struggle to play against?
I'll say elves again for armies, because I do struggle, and I don't really know why. I just, because it doesn't make any logical sense, because if, you know, I'm trying to think, you know, if I've got dwarves, for example, against elves, yes, I might lose more fights than them, but they're killing me less. But it's just, I think there's something more frustrating about losing in the first hurdle rather than the last hurdle, if that makes sense. You won the fight, you can at least go, yeah, I've won the fight, I've pushed them back, I've done this, and then I failed to wound, but oh well, it's fine because my guy hasn't died and I've won the fight. But at least there's something about fighting against elves that annoys me. And I haven't really played as elves very often, so in fact, I've only played with them twice, and both times they were allies, and they were quite thematic allies, so I didn't mind too much. But in terms of people, I mean, I get smashed by a lot of people, and that's kind of a given. Like I played Ed and Will and Ryan Hinch and people like that quite a few times, and they always beat me. But that's kind of nothing out of the ordinary. I've done, but there are people that are sort of that I've managed to beat, and then they've beat me more times back, but I'm quite happy that I've managed to beat them. So there's people like Calman that I won against once, and that was like, oh, right, crazy. But he was playing with the Flesh of the Ring, so it wasn't really good. But you know, but like,
it's still a tick. It's still a point.
Well, that's what I thought. And there's people like Thomas Wagg, who I've got a relatively even-ish. He's definitely beat me more times than not. But he's always like there, kind of hovering around the top tables, or like, you know, dipping his toe in the top table and then coming back down again, and stuff like that. And so I always quite like when I play against him, because we get on quite well, and he plays good armies and he knows how to play properly. But he, like me, I think, will admit that he's a very good player, but he makes big mistakes, like once or twice, and that costs him, like, not just a game, but a tournament. Whereas I make a big mistake, and it always costs me the game rather than the tournament. But and he's a really good player, but I like playing him because he feels like he might be. If I really try, I think I just about on his level, but not quite. And the other person is Jack Render, who always plays, or has, every time I played him, he's been playing spiders. And I don't know whether it's just the matchups or whether I've just been unlucky or whatever. But every time I play Jack, he's just totaled me with Mirkwood spiders and giant spiders and Spider Queen and stuff like this, and it makes me sad. Basically, I'd like to beat his spider army. I will do eventually, I'm sure. But yeah, there's something about the spider army that I can't get my head around it. I also played Aaron Pullen, who makes some amazing spiders, and he did some really nice Rivendell Knights as well. He did a beautiful Mirkwood army, and I played against his spiders and also got smashed by him as well. So spiders are probably the second army that I hate playing against, because I think even though it's not necessarily always logical, once you've been beaten a few times by a certain army in different people's hands, you start going, oh, it's not them again, and then you probably already admitted you're losing, and then you don't go into it thinking, yes, I'm confident I'll win, and then you're already on a losing pattern if you're not confident when you go in.
I'm starting to get a little bit that way with Khazad-dûm.
Really?
Just a pain. Just a pain.
You should play against me with Khazad-dûm, and then it'll be absolutely fine, because you'll just tear me a new one.
No, like I played our friend Tom the other day, and it's just like, cool, you've got dwarves again, and it's the King's Champion again.
Yeah, he's
it's
tough.
Just frustrating. I put Imrahil into him, and he survived. Because he had to use all 5 fate, but he survived. I was like, oh, great, excellent.
Yeah, and then next turn he's like, strength 5.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, it's annoying, but yeah. I think those are the few.
So the next question we've got down here is, I think we might have touched on a bit. Who would you class as the best player you've played? So that could be.
I mean,
the big names, or
yeah. I mean, I played. I've mentioned them already, but you people like your Ryan Hinches, your World Champions, your Red Balls, and Jay Clare. I've played them all, and there's a reason they're always at the top. Like Cowman as well is up there as well. There are quite a few who are, but the big four, the big 3 or 4 that. Jay's just a very good player. I'm happy to say I did manage to beat him once. By look at Throne of Skulls, but I did beat him. And I every time I talk to him, I'd say, "Oh yeah, but I did beat you once, didn't I?" Even though, because I was playing with the Fellowship of the Ring at 1,000 points, and he had a little hood, and it was it was capture and control in the old edition, and he was like, how did you win this? And I was like, I don't know. And I barely even started playing. It was just it was one of those games where, you get Aragorn just rolls a 6 every time, and it was just, he couldn't really do anything about it. But yeah, those are, I mean, Jay is an outstanding player, and the times that I played him, I've always learned something from him. I've not played him loads of times, but the same with Ed. I always enjoy playing against him because he has a very methodical way of playing, and in terms of that, like, not just in the kind of the strategy and the way everything happens, but also in like the way he goes through almost a checklist in his mind. Have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? And you can see the cogs whirring almost and going, okay, yeah, that. So, and he never misses a trick. And in both in the sort of good sense of the word, and also in the kind of the dodgy sense of the word, in the sense that sometimes Ed can be a bit mean, and you're like, you do your move, heroic move, and he says, "Did you call with me?" And you're like, "No, I didn't." And he's like, "Oh well, if I wasn't being nice to you, I'd call you." But like, if he was on the top table, he wouldn't be nice about that. But I love Ed, so I always learn something when I'm playing Ed, and same with Will. I've played Will quite a few times now, and I always learn something. But people that I haven't heard mentioned often are Ryan Hinch and Matt Wright, and Jasmine. And Jasmine, sorry, I've massively left out Jasmine. All 3 of which are kind of on the periphery of top tabling at almost every tournament they go to. And I think they're all brilliant players, and it's about time that they all started podiuming. But I think it's when there's people like Jay and Will and everyone around, I think they struggle, I guess, because they're hard players to beat. But yeah, I really like playing Jasmine, and I like talking to her about lists as well, because she has a very methodical approach to list building. And Matt Light, I like his kind of. There's something about his style. He's kind of.
He's someone I think the community hasn't seen before.
Yeah,
really.
I think it's because he comes from a Magic the Gathering background, and he's very much thinking about like the best combinations. It's almost refreshing to play against someone who isn't massively like devoted to the lore, and he kind of doesn't really care about whether he's got a thematic list or not. He just looks for the best combinations, and that's great. I quite like that, and I think you need people like that in a game, a sort of competitive gaming scene, because it means that they kind of throw curveballs at you when, you know, perhaps not everyone else would, because they're maybe more into the theme than other people. I don't know, but either way, he still seems to not be able to beat Jay, who is very, very thematic in every army he takes, pretty much. So I love, and Ryan Hinch I've played a few times, and he's just very smart about his decisions as well, like the little moves. But there's so many good players, and the problem is I'm a bad player, so like everyone I play is almost better than me. But there's a good middle ground where I like playing certain people that I've played a few times, and we get the best of each other sometimes and not the other times. That's great. But like there's people like Sam Huddy and Tom Hawker and Michael Haskell, and people like that who are definitely on my level. They're like mid-ranking people, and we all have a great laugh when we play, and sometimes I'll get the better of them and vice versa, so I love that. But yeah,
I do enjoy hearing the middle tier kind of just shenanigans that happen in games. Sometimes people are like, I'll just chuck this into this because why not, and it comes off and you're like that's something that I wouldn't generally see.
Exactly. Because it's just I think there's something more. Sometimes people are taking it a little less seriously, so they might be willing to break the conventions of the game and try that 1 in 10 chance or 1 in 100 chance of doing something, and then when it comes off, you got a better story. You know, it's good. Of course. But there are lots of people I've still not been able to play very often, or that I'd like to play more. Like for instance, Damien and Tom, who I've played a couple of times separately and stuff, but I've never really played Tom. And I quite like to play Tom properly, and Damien properly as a competitive player, because most of the time that I see them playing it's at Throne of Skulls or whatever, and they're not being super competitive. And I know they are very good players because I've seen them play. At Ardacon and stuff properly, and I've you hear about the stories of them winning in the old days or whatever. But I'd really have liked to play them and see how they operate, because I'd love to see them really put on their sort of
game face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, rather than just bringing a thematic thing. But obviously that's not where they're bothered about anymore. So fair enough.
I think I've played Tom once and Damien once, to be honest. Tom was at the GT and he wrote his list the night before. And the scenario happened to be in my favour. It was Clash by Midnight. He had goblins and I had Black Vale Archers.
That's rough.
Yeah. And then I played Damien at my first ever tournament, and I beat him because a dwarf ran away on a coach test.
Nice.
But it was I beat him by like 1 VP, and if the dwarf hadn't run away, he would have beaten me by 1 VP. It was super close. But because we've never played,
I was just going to actually just say that. I was just thinking, I've seen you at lots of tournaments, and sometimes I blur the line between whether I've actually played someone or whether I've just chatted to them a lot at a night. But no, we've never played. I'd quite like to have a good game with you, especially because you run Dol Amroth a lot, and I'd really like to play against that. I don't often play against Dol Amroth, so it's always good to play that, but also it'd be just fun to have a game with you. Yeah, like it's nice to play a game with your friends, isn't
it? Because we properly clicked at Mark's event, I think, like us two and you.
Yeah. We were like staying up, drinking, and talking about music and stuff like that. It's good. Yeah, and I don't think I think I'd seen you before, and not.
Yeah, I don't think we'd really spoken before.
No, not really spoken or anything, but yeah.
But yeah, that was a really good weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
So have you got a favourite gaming moment, whether it be at a tournament or in your local game? Like, local club, whether it be a game as a whole or just one moment, like you said with Pippin and the Stone?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've taken the words right out of my mouth. The Pippin and the Stone moment was pretty good, and yeah, to be honest, the best tournament I had in so many different ways was probably Throne of Schools the first time I went, because I ended up winning, which is nice, but it was because I'd had so many brilliant games, and I'd taken the fellowship. It was very much a last minute decision. I'd decided like the week or two before, oh yeah, I think I'll go to that, because that was like the second or third tournament I'd been to, and I thought, oh, I'll go to. I didn't realise there was a Games Workshop one at Warhammer World. I'll go to that. That sounds cool. And then I had to paint 1,000 points in a very short time, and I thought, well, I'll do the Fellowship of the Ring, and I just max everything out, give Gandalf the cart and all that. This was in the old edition, so you didn't even have all the cool synergies you have now. But I just had every game was really good. It was really thematic or really kind of interesting in various different ways. I think I played a Sauron in the first game back in the old edition again, so it was different and fun, and I played a couple of Uruk-hai Scouts armies, and I played Nick Baton from the Warhammer community team, and I played Jay, and I beat his Mahud, and I played Scott Whitefoot, and I threw a stone at the Mummock, and like those that you can't really not enjoy that. And then when it all came to the end of it, and they had I don't know whether they still have this voting system now. I think they do. Your best game votes and your painted votes and all this sort of stuff. So it wasn't to do with me winning games or anything, but like everyone kind of voted for me and said that, oh, not everyone, but like people voted for me and said, oh yeah, it's the best game and your army was painted nicely and all this. And you think, oh, that's really nice. And I just left with this really warm, fuzzy feeling of having met a load of people and them being really nice. And then Damien Oburn came over to me and sort of said, oh, well done. I'd never met him before. I'd watched him on the YouTube channel and stuff like that. I was like, oh my God, it's Damien. And I'd since found out that he basically won like every Throne of Schools before that, and then has now won every one since, or something like it. As I'm the one blip in the record. But yeah, that was great. But there were so many. Like, I think the problem is when you've gone to 20 tournaments in 1 year, like I have in the last year, there's just weekends of just enjoying everything. Like I'll enjoy the tough games where it's like someone's clearly got their game hat on and they're not interested in really sort of doing anything other than winning, and that's fine. Okay, I'll take you on. I'll do my best. So like the Ardacons have been really good for that. I've really enjoyed going to Ardacon and I think meeting some of the Australians and the all the various different people that come from all over the world. That was great fun. And so yeah, gaming. Yeah,
that's definitely one that's one of the reasons we enjoyed going. I know that much. Like the first year we went, it was pretty
first year Ardacon.
It was just me and you.
My first tournament. It was just me and you. And we started the YouTube channel on the journey up.
Yeah, we did.
And it was my first tournament, and I remember the first evening at Chaos, I was on a table with someone from Norway, someone from Denmark, someone from America. I was just like, okay, this is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's, and I've seen these people say this in these videos a lot, and they say, oh, it's great to get this community and all this sort of stuff, and you love the fact that we keep going back because we're all we become friends over a long period of time, and I can imagine if you're watching that as an outsider and you've never been to these tournaments, you might be thinking, yeah, but they're all friends already, so they already know that it's a community, so they're already kind of mates. But it didn't work like that for me. And I know, you have those first sort of tournament, maybe the first tournament or two, you kind of don't know anyone, but then you start the second tournament, you recognise, oh yeah, that guy was at the first one, I think he hosted it or something, and you remember, and then you go and chat. I was like, oh, did I see you at wherever? And then you start building these things, and after a while, it becomes almost. It's almost an addictive thing where you kind of go, oh yeah, well I now know enough people that no matter which tournament I go, and I don't even know who's going to which tournaments half the time, I'll rock up and I'll go, oh yeah, I know you, I know you. But I would very much encourage, if people are listening to or watching, that you think, oh yeah, it's all quite cliquey, it's all loads of all these people on these videos know each other, but that's just because we all go to these tournaments, and you can be part of that as well if you join in. And that's why I started doing the podcast, the Empty podcast, because I thought, well, often there is a sense that sometimes the only people you see are the like top tier gamers and the ones who go a lot. And I thought, oh, if I chat to everyone I play, then maybe people will realise it's not just the same people, but equally the gaming. You become friends with the people who go a lot. So it's quite nice to be able to, I guess, to talk to people who perhaps don't always get spoken to and at tournaments. And it just makes it's clear then that it's not just us six, they're going to all these tournaments. It's like, there are lots and lots of other people out there, and it's brilliant meeting people. Like I just love going to a tournament, and yes, I'll see all you guys and I'll have a great time, and we'll have a few drinks at the bar on the Saturday night or whatever, but also there's always someone you play against that you've not met before. Almost every time, I've never gone to a tournament and not played against someone that I've never met before, and you have a good fun game. And sometimes you might have a bit of you might have a hangover and you've got a bit of a mood on or whatever, but it's still nice to meet someone new and play a game that you both enjoy together. So it's great. I always make a group of friends at each tournament. I think the last group of friends I made was like all the Irish guys who came over to one of the Stockport tournaments, and they just kind of started. We were just taking the piss out of each other for something. I can't remember what it was, and then we just started hanging out, and it was just great because I'd never met them all before, and we just started having a laugh. So yeah, and
I was going to say, I think the only person who have been on all of these and who is involved in the game that I've known before is Sean Creed, and I met him at uni. But Luke, I met through wargaming. Everyone I've spoken to on here, I've met through wargaming and have become good friends with. Been invited to some stags and a stag and a wedding. Unfortunately, it's been cancelled. But it's kind of you just kind of it's really strange how you build these such close relationships with people when you don't see them face to face that often.
Yeah, and you mentioned this before about it's like actually considering the amount of time you spend with someone, but ultimately it's because you've got so many things in common because of that one thing. And I did I wrote an article for the Drawn Combat blog a while back about this. That you kind of, when you think of all the things this hobby combines, it makes it's like it makes complete sense that we all make friends because you think massively. We all like Lord of the Rings, we all like the movies, we all like miniature painting, we all liked gaming, we all like meeting up at the weekends. We're all the kind of person who is willing to go, right, okay, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go out and meet some people that I've never met before at a tournament. So you kind of got this kind of personality already inbuilt. It's like almost a pattern of, well, you're going to like each other because you kind of have to. If you've gone to a tournament, you've got all the attributes, and it'd be crazy if you didn't all get along. So
it's like I was talking to Alistair King last night on Discord, and I met him at the very first Into the West, which is my very first tournament. I went up and stayed in my old house, which my brother was then living in Cardiff, and we were on Discord. So the community interview I did with him was 2 hours. We were on Zoom for 4 hours that night. We were on Discord for 3.5 hours last night, and we even had the conversation about like me and him. I think he's probably one of the people I'm closest with that isn't in my little group, being Luke and Sean and whatnot, because I talk to him so often. And especially with lockdown, I don't think we would have necessarily done this kind of thing without lockdown. Because,
no, probably not.
But like I say, it's you think and you try and communicate in different ways and keep up with people.
Yeah, and in many ways this is quite nice because doing this sort of thing, you get a lengthy long chat with someone, whereas if you go to a tournament, you have maybe 100 chats with for 5 minutes. It's like, oh hi, nice to see you. Oh, I haven't seen you much. Oh yeah, it's been good. Yeah, how did games go? 6-0. Yeah, great. Hey, so I'll see you next time. Bye. And that's it. It's like, and then because you got to do the same over and over again. There's definitely tournaments I go to, and I realise that on the Sunday evening I'll go, oh God, I haven't spoken to Callum or Katrina, and I'll go, I'll wander over and say, oh God, sorry, I haven't talked to you all weekend. I've just and they're like, oh yeah, how you doing? We have a nice little natter and all this sort of stuff. But it's
the thing that I know Sean has come to quite a few tournaments with us, and the thing that he hates is at the end of a weekend trying to leave. Because especially me going around, because I like to say goodbye to everyone.
You're terrible for that.
Like going around, and if it's a 50-man tournament, you probably know 30 of them.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Trying to say goodbye to them all is a nightmare. And in the end, I've had Luke just walk off, and I'm like, I think that's my cue. Right, I've got to go.
And there's always a queue for the tournament organizer or like the first place or whatever, you know. So there's always like you know, whoever wins the tournament kind of going, oh yeah, how's you doing, patting people's back and all that sort of stuff, and then the TO, and you all kind of want to say goodbye to them. So there's almost like a sort of orderly queue to have your hugs and handshakes before you head off. So it's good. Yeah, I actually quite enjoy sometimes as well. A lot of the tournaments I go to, especially the ones in up north, I'll end up coming, or down south, I'll end up coming up the motorway and then get this off at the same service station and like bump into a couple of people. And you're like, oh, hey. It's like, oh, I haven't really. And yeah, it's been quite good because I think the last one I had, there was like Ed and Jay and Ryan Hinch and Matt Wright, I think, and I just saw them and I was like, oh hey, how are you doing? And they're like, oh yeah, we're just having KFC, and then we just sort of had a bit more of a natter bit, sort of weekend out.
We've done it.
We've done exactly the same,
with the Radstock boys, isn't it? Dean Broadway and Andy Hamlin and Phil.
Normally coming back from Warhammer World.
Yeah, it's always the same service station. I couldn't even tell you which one it is, but
it's just about the right distance. It's like, oh, okay, I've got 2 hours in now. It's like getting to 7, 8 o'clock. Okay, I probably should have something to eat or whatever. Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
So have you got a favourite tournament?
No, I don't. I honestly don't. I probably haven't been to enough of them more than once to really cement one into my head. Obviously, everyone said things like Seven Stones, and when you've talked to it, and I would highly recommend Seven Stones if you can get tickets, which is not easy because it sells out very quickly, and there's kind of like I don't really know how the system works, but there's kind of almost a reserve system that works. So people often get them before they're even properly on sale. I don't quite know how it works, but anyway, there's Seven Stones and there's Throne of Skulls, which everyone says as well. And I would like to say those two are very good, and they are absolutely. But ultimately, any tournament is great fun. There are some that are perhaps more competitive, but that's fine because I enjoy that element just as much as the others. I really enjoyed going to Stirling the 2 times in a row now, which has been great because the first time I drove up, me and the girlfriend had like a very long weekend there, and she was like willing to go shopping while I played games, which was really fun. That was great. And last time I ended up going in a minibus with a load of people for World Champions birthday, which was great. So I drove up to Yorkshire and got on a minibus, and like they drove for me, which was fab because you could sleep on the way back. But that was good. I probably wouldn't have gone if it wasn't for that. So that was really nice. So that was a good one. And as I mentioned earlier, Element Games, any tournament at Element Games, I love because it's just such a great venue. It's so, and there's like there's like I say, the bar, and there's the fact that it's quite close to me, not that close, but it's like 2 hours, so it's not hugely far to travel. But it's far enough that it feels like you've arrived, and it's like, yeah, I've arrived, and you kind of almost have to go the night before for me anyway, because it's just that, because I wouldn't really want to get up 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning to go, so I sort of go on the Friday night, and then I can have a couple of beers on the Friday, and then wake up at a normal time and all that sort of stuff. So it's anywhere there. So this Scouring has been really good, and Desolation a couple of times has been great as well. Probably the one I've enjoyed most was probably that big Desolation of Stockport a couple of years ago. That was really good because it was like Ardicon, but not quite the same. It was like 130 or so people, and that was really good because it was like felt like a huge tournament, and there was also the amenities, and there was a big night out afterwards, and it was all great fun. So I completely lost my voice after that tournament. I literally, and it was the second podcast that I did, and I literally lost my voice. I couldn't speak the next day because I stayed out till 5 o'clock in the morning, and I swear it was the cat's fault. There was a cat staying in the Airbnb that they hadn't told me about, and I get itchy throats with a cat, but it's definitely the booze as well. But so anywhere like that,
definitely the cat.
Yeah, I blame the cat.
Nice one. So we've already talked about how many events you've been to, but what was the furthest distance you travelled to play? You're fairly up north.
Yeah, so I'm in the Midlands, so I'm East Midlands, so Lincolnshire, if anyone didn't know. I've travelled to Scotland, and that was the furthest, definitely. I had made vague plans to go to Ireland this year. It wasn't fully sorted, and I was kind of umming and ahhing about it and things like that. But I had planned to go in late August, and I think it was like, I don't know what it was. It was like some sort of might have been the Irish Open or something like that. And I'd been talking to those Irish guys, and a couple of them were going back and stuff like this. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'd quite like to go to Ireland. I've always wanted to, and I'd almost done it. So that would be the next one on the agenda. But actually, I do have big plans. I want to go to New Zealand, and I want to go to Australia. And if I'm going all that way, I'm not just for Warhammer. That would be ridiculous. But
they come here.
Yeah, well, that is true. That is true. But they're coming. To be fair, they are coming for the international big tournament. So that's different. And also, they're like the competitive best players in the world and stuff. So, whereas I'm not. but I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. Obviously, haven't we all? So
it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, and so I think I'd love to go there, and then if I'm there, going and seeing all the surroundings, I'd feel like I desperately want to play Lord of the Rings there. So I know if I go to New Zealand, which I do intend on doing at some point, I would take some toy soldiers, and hopefully Louise would be okay with me playing for 2 of those days. out of the 3 weeks or whatever we're going, 2 or 3 weeks that we're going there. I think it'd be nice to play some toy soldiers for a day or two. And also Australia, there's a couple of other things I want to do in Australia, but
because you're quite friendly with the Green Dragon guys.
Yeah. I've just because we do podcasts, and you just get chatting to each other and messaging over the internet. So I get on really well with Jeremy, and meeting Matt and Kylie at the Ardicon last year was it last year? It might be the year before.
They came both years? No.
I think it was just one. I can't remember. I might have been at the.
Because Josh came one year, didn't he?
Yeah. No, I remember. I didn't. I think I bumped into Kylie and had a quick chat with her, and knew that she was in the Green Dragon, but I hadn't listened to the Green Dragon at that point, and the first one. So I knew about it, but I hadn't started listening. But then the second year I properly listened to it, and I really enjoyed. So that was nice meeting them. I would definitely like to go and see them and Lockie from Zorpa Zorp, who I've chatted with a lot as well. So for some reason I've gotten really into chatting with the Australians down there. But I have family there as well, which helps. So which is good. But there's loads of some other little projects I kind of want to do in Australia. So I've always had a thing for. There's a musician called Gautier. You've probably heard of him, but I'm massively obsessed with him, which is weird because nobody else is. But I'd really like to go and see his band, essentially. So and they don't go anywhere else because nobody else cares. but I'd love to go to Australia to see Gautier in concert and his band, The Basics, which I'm strangely obsessed with. So that was again. Yeah, it's again another reason to travel somewhere, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly. So final thing before you go, we've mentioned it kind of flippantly throughout. I see you're wearing the T-shirt. We'll talk about your podcast. So you started, just give us a brief kind of rundown on when you started and what you do on it.
Yeah, so it was February last year, or it might have been January last year, I think. It's been going on a year and a half or so. So that's cool. But basically I started it because I work in radio, and I liked the Green Dragon podcast, and I thought I'd never actually considered podcasts for Warhammer before, and I don't know why, but someone told me about it, and I thought, oh, this is a good idea. I think it's Scott Johnson who told me about it, and I thought, I'll give that a try. And then I started listening to it, and I thought, oh yeah, this is great. And they were quite long and stuff like that, so they're good for driving, especially 2 tournaments and back. Or I drive a lot for work. I drive around Lincolnshire like every day for two or so hours, so it's great to have something to listen to, not just news and whatnot. So and then I read, and then at the time that I started listening, they'd dried up the podcast. They'd stopped making them for a while, or they just couldn't get together, or whatever it was. And